Hi everyone, this is Palash and I'm going to record the logical reasoning section of CDC 12. Uh, Two passages that I would like to discuss, which is passage 1 and passage 3 that I thought that you guys might have found difficult, though they were not difficult. I think passage 3 was cruel, but I'll not call it difficult. At least two questions have been straight away left probably. I think uh, continuing the series that in the CDC 9 that I discussed, that I think you should start to build the habit that if a question is very challenging and if it's taking a lot amount of time, you should start to you know by default have that presets in your mind that you should skip these kind of questions, because a, you waste a lot of time, and b, you get a negative marking into them. So I think those should be the highlights, and which were those two questions in the passage 3 that you could have avoided, because even I avoided during the mock. So I took the mock, I got a 19.75, and today we are going to discuss upon how you could have easily got a 19.75 in the logical section. What were the two three questions that you could have easily left? So hang on with me. I think you can watch this video because I'm recording it in a normal pace, but you can always watch these videos at a faster speed at, I think, 1.5x or 1.25 or 2x, whatever suits you best. But the idea is to basically learn few approaches that we are discussing. You can mirror us, emulate us, so that you start to think according to us. So mirror is something that I want you to say, start approaching, copying me. I was really very happy when I received the last feedback that some students, of course, in the centers have started thinking that, okay, while did I approach these mocks? And when they were looking at the options, they were using my tricks and techniques to uh, uh, eliminate options and finding those options, that what would I have thought and what how would I have approached. I really appreciate them, and they're very, very thankful to those people who have uh, came up and said that to me. So thank you so much. I hope for all of us who are not emulating this, please try to emulate these techniques, and I think definitely you'll definitely help it out. Okay, now without much ado, therefore, let's get started. As I say before every video that I record, that there are a couple of approaches that I particularly follow. For example, the TAP model. What is the TAP model? The TAP model is basically to find out what is the main idea of the passage. So, what is the main idea? Even if the questions are not asked, you should apply the TAP model. For example, you should have definitely applied TAP model in the passage 3 and would have reaped a better results. You could have easily then also, if I have a better understanding of the crux, let's say a sense of what the passage is, two fold benefits I have. Number one, that the examiner is not able to confuse me. Okay, examiners aren't able to confuse me, because I know what the author was talking about, and b, I can straight away understand or can overview or predict what are the kind of questions that I should avoid, what kind of questions to be avoided. Now, why did I say that? For example, let's say I'm not able to get the author's perspective, or I'm not able to get the overall argument what the passage is trying to make. Then question interested in strengthening of the argument, uh, strengthening with respect to the or weakening the core argument for that matter, finding assumptions of the core argument, inferential questions of dealing with the core arguments should be therefore left. But what was the question that I could answer? Which of the following is true according to the passage? Which of the following is true according to the first paragraph? What can be inferred according to the fourth paragraph? What can be inferred according to the first paragraph? I think these are specific idea based questions that can be definitely would have done. So I think it gives us two big benefit, that examiners aren't able to confuse me because I know straight away, and then I can predict what are the questions I can avoid that. I can straight away look at it and say that, okay, I don't know, I should not get into this mess of this particular kind of a question, and that saves time and that ensures accuracy and a less of negatives at a difficult paper. So what does the TAP model stands for? Again, the T is about the topic of discussion, which all of you do find out. So it's the topic of discussion that must be always found out. What are the A is basically the aspects about that topic that the author would have dealt. Right, they will not deal with much of the aspects of it, because in 500 words you can't write too many things, right? So the author deals with two or three. Usually it's going to be two, but two to three aspects, not more than that. And then very important is, what is our perspective of the author? You can also call it author stance, right? That even if he's giving me this information, this 500 words which discusses X, discusses, let's say, ABC about the X, but what is he making a point? I mean, what is his intentions behind giving me that kind of information? What is his perspective? What is his viewpoint that he wants the reader to be aware of? I think that is what it is very, very crucial in finding out, and that helps you understanding, getting their inferential questions or agreement disagreement question, that which are the following with the author agree kind of, right. So I think that is what from the TAP model that you should definitely apply. The second model that we work for is the beast model, and this is the model of elimination of wrong options. So for the elimination, you can elimination tactics. Okay, what does these all stand for? B stands for your broad or narrow, means when we have kind of generalizations or to specific information given. E stands for extreme, using absolute words like always, only, always, ever, never, solely, completely, etc. These words should be definitely uh, carefully taken. So extreme also kind of tweaks, so is kind of exaggerations as well, should be taken care of. If we get A is an alien, which is basically an unrelated information. I'm sure everybody is able to eliminate that. S is a sidetrack, now which therefore says that, what is out of scope or what is out of discussion, maybe of the question or the content, so loses scope of either the question or the content. So just be careful. And T is the tone mismatch. And what is this tone? The tone is usually positive, negative. So P and B, which is the positive, negative, and balanced. So these are the two models that we will insist that you should apply for your English as well as your uh, logic sections. As I also say, in terms of highlighting or underlining, whatever is in the tab is something that you should highlight, and therefore you can ensure not everything is underlined, and therefore you can look at in a pressure or a timed scenario, you can only look at the glimpses of what is being very, very special. So let's apply, let's tap the tap in terms of the first uh, logical reasoning a section that was the first passage of the logical reasoning section, which is about the Epicurus concept. So, what the hell was this passage talking about, and how did we deal with the question? Though relatively in easier passage, but still, let's look at. I was quite happy to see the word datum of happiness. I mean, datum is a singular form, but very less used in terms of the conventional English. But datum is a singular form of the word data, data being a plural. But in American English, data and datum, I mean, data is used like a fish, like a plural, which has zero plurals, which have kind of things like deer, sheep, which is singular as well as plural as the same word. But in British English, they especially use the word datum, which is like a quanta, like a singular in terms of it. So very interesting. I mean, a kind of an archaic grammarian thing, but yeah, let's tap into the tap. What was this passage basically saying about? So let me quickly make you understand. So let me quickly write down. I think the topic of discussion was, of course, everybody understands, is Epicurus philosophy. Okay, he's Epicurus's philosophy upon the pleasure and pain. Okay, that how can we gain the pleasure by or by happiness in sense was saying by acceptance of the pains of the tragedies and so on and so forth. What was the A? What is the aspects that he has dealt with is about is his acceptance model. I think he has discussed upon the that what is the acceptance level of it and what is the moral balance regarding it. Sorry. And what is the perspective of the author? The author is basically he's appreciative. I think in the last line he's very appreciative. Last line, sorry, the first line of the last paragraph, that Epicurus revolutionized the theological realm, and he said that not to fear death. So he's appreciative. So I think I'll put it as appreciative. So he's appreciative about the concepts, about the logical thinking, or the philosophical discovery, but he's very skeptical about the human limit of it. So I think I'll also write that he's skeptical with human application of it, that human capabilities, let's say. Right. So I think that is what that he's appreciating that this was very revolutionary and it revolutionized the theological realm. That why we are not to fear from death and so on and so forth. But then he's also skeptical. I think in the beginning he was in the middle he was trying to say that human beings cannot be or what is the innate thing that can guide us the human beings, that what should be right and what should be or where to draw the line. I think that part he was trying to be skeptical about. So I think now, with that understanding, let's proceed from what are the questions. The very first question, the 85th question, says upon which of the following, if true, weakens the idea. I don't know if you guys remember this, that whenever you have a strengthening, weakening question, try and follow what I call as my SON model. Again, a quick review upon what is an SON model. Like I'll try to categorize each option into three categories, whether it is going to strengthen the author's viewpoint, because I just find the TAP model opposes the viewpoint. So this directly strengthens, this directly opposes, and then this is does neither, or I call it neutral. Okay, that it does neither. It doesn't support the author's claim or doesn't oppose. So each option should be categorized in terms of the SON, and then I think you can definitely reach. Since you have already done the tap and you've already understood the crux of it, I think finding strengthening questions, weakening or strengthening questions should not be a challenge. So let's look at what is the which of the following is weakening the idea in the paragraph one, that pleasure comes from accepting pain and tragedy. So uh, let's look at the first one. Human beings often derive happiness from external achievements, relationships, and indulgences rather than from accepting the pain and tragedy. I think this option is a neutral option. It doesn't affect the argument. Now, many individuals facing extreme pain or tragedy find relief only in escape or avoidance, not in embracing acceptance. I think this kind of opposes the author's claim that you, but it still only talks about. So I'll say opposite, but only indirectly opposing. Why? Because it's only dealing with extreme pain or tragedy. It doesn't talk in general, right? So I'll say opposition, but not opposition. So let's keep this option for a while. See, historical philosophies other than Epicurus, such as utilitarianism, argue that the pursuit of pleasure lies in maximizing happiness, not in balancing pain with acceptance. Right? I think C also kind of puts a perspective. It opposes that historical philosophies other than Epicurus. But again, we will not try to discuss and go outside Epicurus's viewpoint, because Epicurus is our topic of discussion. So I'll call it probably neutral, or you can even call it again an opposition which is indirect. It doesn't directly attack that Epicurus was wrong. You say other things are happening, but that doesn't directly contradict me that okay, I am not. So I'll find the opposing arguments. So I'll put C. These say scientific studies show that the constant exposure to suffering can actually diminish mental tranquility, making acceptance less likely to lead to pleasure. I think that is definitely addressing both the aspects of it. So I will say opposition, which is direct. Why? It addresses 2 points. Number one, constant exposure to suffering can diminish mental tranquility. So if your tranquility, if you're not feeling good about it, and then he also continues making acceptance less likely to lead to pleasure. So you are constantly tortured. So even if exposed, the constant exposure to suffering cannot give you the innate capability to actually accept. And then how will it lead to pleasure? So I think it is better than says many individual facing and not in embracing acceptance, versus saying scientific studies, if proved by an evidence or giving you a backup as well. I think D therefore is a better attack or an opposition than your Bombay. So if you were confused between Bombay and Delhi, go for our Delhi. Okay. Uh, Question number 86. In the information in the passage is the correct, so the following must be necessarily true. These questions, necessarily true, basically are fact-laden questions. You have to read the passage and find out which of the following is correct. So I think number one, human beings can always regulate their indulgences. Again, rationally, which makes the universal application of virtue fairly easy. I think this was definitely a contradiction. Uh, Always is an extreme, and makes the universal virtue fairly easy. It's kind of not what the author is saying. Acceptance of life's inevitable pain, tragedy, and death is inessential for attain. I think this is clear contradiction. So gone. The rejection of fear of death implies that there is no afterlife, no heaven or hell, and no divine judgment. I mean, this argument, this information was therefore mentioned directly, that what happened was this, that if we become nothing, we cease to exist for time, we will. So I think this is definitely the correct answer. Then pleasure is dependent on external influences, material satisfaction, also mental tranquility. However, this is partially correct, but definitely does not is not necessarily true with respect to the passage. So partially true. I think we can see is, if you're confused between C and D, I believe choose C, because C is safe to say. We do not know about external indulgences. By external indulgences, what does he mean? By material satisfaction, of course, but I think there's no mention specifically of material satisfaction. And even if it does, I mean, we always choose our options, which is safe to say. I think C is safer still, so we should go for C. What about 87? I can challenge the convention that humans possess a rational and innate limitation to their indulgences into the act that is good or bad. Which of the following suggested by the author in the above line? So, what is particularly is he mentioning, or what is the understanding with respect to this line? That the distinction between good and bad is always objective and universal. Again, extreme. So gone. People can naturally balance indulgences without difficulty, distinguishing good with ease. So he's saying it's very easy, but that I don't think that is correct, because they don't. Uh, then we have an option C, which says human often lack the innate rational ability to regulate when the actions become excessive. I think that is correct, because that is what the line reflect, and therefore the correct answer. Human beings are capable of perfect self-control if guided by a proper virtue. See, this is again a bit of exaggeration and extreme, that we will say, and therefore wrong. Question number 88. The strength of this argument was that possessing the proper virtues infers indulging into vices to ultimately obtain tranquility. Now, which of the following can be inferred from this statement? Attaining tranquility requires not the reduction of vices, but the balanced engagement with them. So I think definitely the first is definitely correct. Virtues and vices are interconnected, and the one may lead to the other in the pursuit of happiness. In a broader game, that is what he's saying, that we have to look at where's the limiting point, and if we are very careful upon it, I think that accepts. So 1 and 2 therefore was acceptable, but there's no option I can find 1 and 2. So here you need to be careful that maybe he's saying all of the above. uh, and if you say moral perfection, though he has not uh, explicitly said about something as perfection, but he has definitely talked about moral balance, and therefore this also becomes correct, that moral balance lies in moderation rather than in absolute denial of human law. So in moderation. So I think that is where I think all the three were correct, and the answer should have been Delhi. Question number 89. What can be most reasonably inferred from the statement pleasure ultimately derives from acceptance? So I think again in the context of the passage, what is he saying, trying to say that accepting tragedies and death not only helps balance inner turmoil and disallows the mind to remain tranquil, but why only tragedies and death? Why not all other flaws? So being narrow. So he's being narrow. Pleasure is not dependent only on external indulgences and material satisfaction. So I think that is a pleasure ultimately derives from acceptance. So it's not only on external indulgences and material satisfaction, it also depends upon the acceptance of the point, and therefore I think 89th is going to be Bombay. So not dependent only on external indulgences, that is perfectly fine. But human beings must never remain completely indifferent, and human beings must remain completely indifferent. Again, all extremish options. So pretty decent passage, pretty understandable, pretty decent options are very far away, and therefore you could have easily got it. Okay, now which of the following best captures the essence of the passage on Epicurus philosophy? Now this question was relatively a good question, I felt. If you have to read the question very carefully, he says, which of the following best captures the essence of the passage on Epicurus philosophy? People would have misinterpreted and said that, okay, which of the following best captures the essence of the passage? Maybe if I would have only stopped at that, I think the answer could have been a Bombay. That what is the passage covering is the both the aspects, that is Bombay that presents. But he says on the Epicurus philosophy. So if the Epicurus philosophy is whatever is being discussed, how is the passage basically rationalizing that, or which of them is kindly covering it out? So then if we with that understanding and with this halt, we would have understood these questions, I think it would have been created a much more impact. For example, A, that says, he argues that pleasure comes from accepting life's inevitable pain and death, balancing empathy with detachment to attain tranquility. I think that's a perfect in a nutshell what the passage was saying. So that's correct. Why are other options wrong? Epicurus presents pleasure as freedom from pain, but his theory is strengthened by impracticality of humans regulating virtue and vice rationally. Perfect. That is what the essence of the passage is, right? But not on philosophy. He's appreciating philosophy, and he's just accepting that, there is a bit of problem is with human capacity. So Epicurus presents pleasure and freedom from pain, but his theory is strengthened by the impracticality, but this theory is not strengthened by it. So I think that's where it doesn't go according to the Epicurus philosophy. For Epicurus, true happiness lies more on acceptance of suffering, tragedy and death than in questioning. No, there is no comparison, right? Than in questioning, more in acceptance, comma, and death uh, than in questioning. There's no comparison being made. So I think sidetrack. Epicurus revolutionized thought by only rejecting fear of death and linking pleasure to acceptance of suffering, though the balance of virtues remains unresolved. So again, something that the author is putting, but it's not something which Epicurus would have liked. So except for the, I think if you would have read the question and you would have felt a slight Tim that I'm not able to interpret, or these options pretty much say the same thing, I think you could have left it and got easily a 5 uh, out of 6 on this. Even if this goes wrong, I think you would have got uh, 5 right, and then 1 wrong, which is 4.75. would have been a good score in this passage. So if you have not got this, I think you need to go back, understand the TAP model, apply these models of eliminations, and then get it. I'm not discussing passage 2, but I think passage 2 was relatively easier. If you hate political passages and you're not reading the news and so on and so forth, I think you could have created a problem. Here there was a question which you might have struggled with. So like an assertion reasoning question, if you have never followed this, I think that might have caused you trouble, but it was relatively very easy. And then there is if true would challenge the author's argument. So if you have not understood, so this is again the SON model that you could have worked on. I think except for these two questions, everything was very, very straightforward and could have got again. So taking that into account, leaving one, you could have got a 5 or 5 on 6, or if you have got one wrong, could have got a 5.75 out of 6. No. Okay, then comes the most dreadful passage that I will really want to discuss. That passage 3. Passage 3 was quite first. The backdrop is number one, science, and therefore scientific passage is something that people find irksome. So that is one of the cause. Second, it was more fact based. So I've usually seen that fact based passages people struggle with, but there were clear two questions that even if you're fact based, you could have easily omitted. Okay, so let me give a quick analysis of what the TAP model of this passage is. I think what was the TAP saying? Okay, so it's basically discussing nanoparticles, right? What was nanoparticles? I think their definition and their classification. Two important aspects that I understood. What were the aspects of nanoparticle that the passage has dealt with? That what is EU's definition of it? And how does EU's definition is basically a fit. So how is EU's definition? I think also he discussed upon something like natural versus man-made, which he also called engineered. Then he dealt with it in what was the portion and what's the proportion of things. So I think that also needs to come. And what is the perspective of it? I think the perspective was very clear that what is the application uh, or basically the usage of EU's definition and EU's understanding to help the health and environment. Very later on discusses that it has been found that it has a primary kind of a properties of antifungal, right? The utilization of antifungal drugs, and so on and so forth. So I think, and then these nanoparticles hold great promise for biomedicine and environmental systems. So I think understanding because they are biodegradable, biocompatible, and so on and so forth. So I think that is the crux of what this passage was actually trying to say. But if I understood that, I think I could have knocked off all the correct questions. But still, I will go step by step. Okay, if I have to also break down what this passages individual paragraphs were saying, I think the first paragraph was basically trying to describe that what are the classification, as I said, what is the classification of it. So this is manufactured material, and then which is also called the engineered one, often called as engineered nanomaterial or manufactured ones. And then what should be the classification that you should have? Nanomaterial should have a primary size of this, because this was a factual information and they wanted you to understand and note it down because they had a question upon it. So I think it's simple, not a big problem. You should try to retain these amount of data. At least this chunk of information needs to be important. And then how much substance, and then how much of the chemical substance is at the nanoscale. And then he gives two examples that but consider a sack of fish meal. So the exemplification was, so as I always say, the ideas are important. The evidence or the premise is just the supporting role that it plays to put what is the author trying to communicate. So I think the latter part is not that obvious. If you would have highlighted or just underlined that, okay, how much of the chemical substance is at nanoscale, you could have understood that, okay, rest whatever he's saying is kind of an explanation for what is this all about. Okay, now the argument made in the first paragraph was that the EU's definition therefore helps the manufacturer to decide the product is nano or not. I think therefore again I would like to highlight that he says EU's definition is helps. So he is in favor of EU. I can see his position that, okay, he is definitely in the favor and he helps the manufacturer to decide. Now, in the second paragraph, he was trying to say that they are now utilized in various industries. So, what is their classification? What is their application? Currently, environmental risk have brought about by excessive utilization of antibiotics, which is are well known, and therefore researchers are looking for an alternative measures for pathogenic microorganisms that are both effective and economical. And then he comes on to his final point, and he says that metal oxide nanoparticles have displayed diverse type of inhibitory activity as pathogenic against pathogenic microorganisms. They can be used as an antimicrobial and antifungal properties है उनमें, which have relatively safety with compared to other drugs. So various synthetic and biological. So how is it related to health and how is it related to the environment? Is what the passage was saying. All you needed to do was calm yourself up. I think in a rush, you should have actually completed passage 4, come back at passage 3 and would have done passage 3 with a very relaxed mind. And whenever these factual kind of passages are there and too much information author is given, either you note it down somewhere or break these paragraphs in a microscopic viewpoint that, okay, what is the paragraph 1 saying and how is the paragraph 2 related to the paragraph 1. That also is a kind of a mind mapping technique that really helps people understand. Okay, let's quickly rush to the questions. Number one, which of the following is the author most likely to agree? Very simple. I think he says all the products with nanoscale must be regulated. Nah, extreme. Then he says naturally occurring nanomaterials are more suitable for medical. Nowhere comparison has been happened that what's going to suit. Metal oxide nanoparticles are promising and safer alternatives to traditional antimalarial. Just mentioned, right? So he's definitely going to agree. There's no sense of disagreement. The classification of fish meal at a nano depends on the size of a nanoscale is basically an example. So why will the author agree with? I mean, ridiculous. He's given the example, but don't get confused by these kind of options. Some information needs to be put as an option, but not every answer is an option. Not every information that is written in the passage can be a correct answer. Which of the following can be inferred? So an inference question. Again, if you have not understood this passage, could have left this question, but this was, I like the options. I could have, I definitely would have left the 100 and 101. I really did because they were too long, too lengthy to read, too taxing on mind. So I will clearly leave, and I got a 4 out of it. But then I came back initially, and then I did them. I think they were also not very difficult. So if they just needed a relaxed mind, that's what I'm saying. Okay, 98. Which of the following can be inferred? Products unintentionally contain nanoscale particles may not be regulated as nanoparticles. I think this information is very true, and this is from the paragraph 1. So very correct. Only man-made materials can be applied. Again, extreme. So no, the EU considers all powders with any nanoparticle a clear extreme. Natural nanoparticles pose more environmental risk than synthetic. Again, contradiction. Pose more environmental risk. They ulta hai. So clear. Okay, now referring to these lines, this may seem like quibbling over semantics. The EU's definition therefore helps the manufacturer nano and not. Which of the following messages is the author conveying? In the above line, the author is trying to convey which of the following is just a repetition of the question. Okay, so what is he saying? The distinction may appear trivial but plays a key role in regulatory classification. I think awesome. That is exactly what he's saying. Regulatory agencies tend to exaggerate minor differences. Is he putting EU therefore on help? Remember the word was, this is slightly shifting the tone of it. So sidetrack, tone mismatch. Scientific are often vague and lead. Lol, vague. Wow, scientific definitions are vague and unnecessary lead to unnecessary classification issues. Super lol. Okay, what about D? The use of semantic details only confuses the distinction between nano and. Now, some people would have understood, but he said it helps. So you have to look at the author's point, not your point. And even if you do not know the meaning of the word semantic, then you are confused and then you are saying. So I think clearly not the option. The use of semantic is basically the understanding that a word comes true. Now, which of the following strengthens the argument of the first paragraph? So I could have avoided this. I mean, you could have definitely avoided, but in the passage one, he was trying to say, and then again, whenever they list down these kind of things, look at the macro approach. Okay, that what in a nutshell he's trying to say. So we have to apply kind of finding the crux of each option. So it becomes tedious but not difficult. What was the first one saying? That how it helps the EU. I use a definition how helps the people. Now he says the meteorology and in strengthening and weakening it's always about the newer piece of information, so you can't apply Baines or a beast model. A meteorological survey reports broad acceptance of the one to this range and standardized method, indicating measurement practices that enable consistent application. So he's basically says that okay, standardized method accepted and enable consistent application of the proportion based definitions across industry in Europe. But ठीक है, scientific acceptance है, right? That is what this is dealing with. Okay, B option. EU registration data show adopting a proportion-based nanoscale threshold significantly reduced classification dispute. So how it helps? He's saying reduce disputes and materially shortened approval timelines for powders containing incidental nanosize, improving decision making. How okay, I get a lot of improve my answer. Okay. An independent audit finds products with most materials at nanoscale exhibit distinct surface properties versus micron form, supporting regulatory separation and justifying the use of the proportion threshold. Again, more scientific and independent audits are correct. But how does it help EU? EU registration data. But how help? So I think neutral to my argument, not central to my argument. Cross jurisdictional analysis indicates agencies using proportion based anomatic threshold experiences fewer classification appeals and clear. So this is bureaucratic. So if I have to actually choose, I think I will choose the central argument of the passage one was how it helps. Around the EU definition therefore helps. Not bureaucratically, not scientifically. So I think what my answer should have been based on that why will I consider bureaucratics to be very important. So B. Okay. Now 101 again tangy question, time waste but ठीक है इतना भी difficult नहीं था. The European Aquaculture Firm submits these questions are basically called as analogous questions. And they're usually painful. If you have not understood the passage, you should straight away avoid because they actually expect you to have the core understanding of the passage. So a 101 should have been clear elimination. और ऑप्शंस भी देखो कितने स्ट्रांग है तो मतलब बड़े बड़े हैं. So it would have taken, I think these two questions would have actually taken you 5 to 7 minutes, right? If you are one kind of that kind of a tenacious kind of person that nahi main to karke rahunga. So I think that is a problem. uh, okay, so okay, what was he saying? Aquaculture and a feed additive, those particles are so apna range hai so they should be qualified because 1 nm to 100 nm था तो 20 to 80 lies within the 1 to 100 तो they पक्का qualification होना चाहिए. And product via plant extract synthesis tests show that reduced pathogen load and likely drop in antibiotic use. तो मस्त है अपना pro whatever was saying. तो ये कह रहा है that the question therefore he's saying what is which regulatory response best supports the passage's overall argument. तो जो passage की line है रेगुलेटरी रिस्पॉन्स ऐसे इस चीज को अप्रूव करना चाहिए डिसअप्रूव करना चाहिए काइंड ऑफ what would you do is in legal reasoning का same skill set है either just scientific application या factual application is what they are testing. So classify aquashield as a nanomaterial because most particles ये तो perfect है and allow conditional approval tied to green synthesis verification nano safety evaluation and demonstration. तो conditional approval दे देता हूँ तो कोई problem नहीं है, there is no harm. So I think we'll keep this option sideline. B देखते हैं. Reject aquashield outright on the principle that any nano in animal feed is inherently. ये कहाँ लिखा था? Not author's view require information. तो ये तो गया extreme है. That regulatory body is never going to respond like this. Approve Aquashield as a non-material since fish feed often contains incidental. Okay, approval hai. Wave nanoscale review and regulated like a conventional micron scale additives made by standard milling. बट आई थिंक इसमें वो पॉइंट लैकिंग है ना, कंडीशनल अप्रूवल दो और ग्रीन सिंथेसिस को वेरीफाई करो. सो आई थिंक क्यों हम इसको रिस्क लेंगे. D. Defer the Aquashield decision until international bodies agree on it. And deferring the decision is not an action. I mean, not taking an action is not an action. So, and also agree on the one definition. I mean, that was very low because what was author saying? Author was saying that EU's definition is helpful, though there is no one clear definition, but whatever EU has defined. So I think that doesn't match the support the passage's overall argument. So yeah, clear hai. So I think clear one option that is left is A. Okay, I think last question of this passage was which of the following can be inferred from the last paragraph. तो कुछ नहीं करना था, दो क्वेश्चन से डरना नहीं था, चुपचाप करना था. Metal oxide nanoparticles are universally safe and effective in all contexts. Their degradability and bio eliminate the need for additional safety assessment. तो ये कैसे कह सकते, थोड़ा extreme है ना. All contexts and then eliminate the need for additional safety. करना ही नहीं चाहिए. It's wrong. Logically not doesn't make sense. Okay, for clinical uses, metal oxide nanoparticles typically require biofunctionalization. Their promise derives from relative safety, biocompatibility, degradability, solely in मस्त है, ये तो अपना वाला बात बोल रहा है. एप्लीकेशन बोल रहा था ना, दो चीजें एंटीमाइक्रोबियल, एंटीफंगल, क्लियर लिखा है. I will accept. Okay, why are other answers wrong? The role of metal oxide nanoparticles primarily agriculture. They are fungicidal property, not the fungicidal property or anti-fungicidal properties that we are looking for. Application relevance of तो ये outside है. Fungicidal properties हम look कर रहे हैं, नहीं तो outside the scope है. Side track है. Synthesis choices are irrelevant. वाह, regardless of the purpose, metal oxide irrelevant बोल रहा है. Not the authors का वो नहीं सोचता. Okay, now passage 4 was also very easy. It was all about, I got a 6 on 6 in the passage. No wrong, right? So I think that is what if I would have added. So let's add the marks. So 6 on 6 in the passage 4. Okay, I think if I look at passage 3, you could have easily got 4 on 6. ऐसा, if you would have paused 100, 101, you could have eliminated. You would have not even done. I think you would have easily got it. तेरे को मिलता 4 out of 6. Okay, so this is passage 3. Okay, passage 2, ठीक है, एक दो गलती है तूने किया होता तो 4.75 वरना 5. Okay, as I said, passage 2 and passage 1 I should have got again. So मैं दोनों जोड़ देता हूँ. हाँ, P1, P2, P3 and P4. P4 all you need to be fresh. 6 on 6 था. P3 4. Right, P2 5, P2, P1 5. 5 plus 5 10, 10 6, 16, 16 4 20. क्लियर था मेरा 24 में. मैं लाइफ में सॉर्टेड होके चलता हूं. तो ठीक है यार, क्वेश्चंस नेगेटिव नहीं करता, बट ठीक है चलो. 4.75, 4.75, 4 3 में मैं 4 ही बोलूंगा because 4 would show that you are clever, you are a good test taker, you are a clever test taker. When the questions are daunting, you say is okay, I will not get negative. So clever test taker. 1. This 6 on 6. Okay, let's do this. 10 and 8 uh, is 18. 18 plus 1.5, 19.5. So I think these are not tenable, but getting into single digits in logic sections in this, uh, I think getting nines or getting 10 is at this stage is clearly showing that you're not basically applying the skill set. It's not judgment. It's not that you're not competent enough. It's not anything like that. Uh, I think uh, Please give mocks, reflect upon them, and don't let the low score dishearten you. I mean, guys, you are taking the heat, you're taking uh, the heat of everything, and doing this, it's amazing, and it's very promising. People who show up, I think consistency is something that matters most in life. So people who show up, opportunity strikes, and then I think it's very therefore important for you to not give up. Okay, some mocks will go up, some mocks will go down. uh, don't let the score dishearten you. Continue your journey. And whatever models that we are, if you have already reached the score, try to pitch perfect them. Have that skill set to already high scorers that you have. Try to gain that skill set that, I should learn which question should be avoided, and I can utilize therefore the time to another sections or another question that I know for sure. I also realized the quants was a bit lengthy, so you could have easily saved your 5 minutes that you would have wasted in question number 101 and 100 into utilizing and getting at least two, three questions right of quants. That's what I say is. But any which ways, thank you so much for watching this. I hope you're enjoying. If you have any doubts, guys, reach out to me on Telegram at the rate Abhipalash. If you have something urgent to say, please WhatsApp me. If you want to discuss something, please reach out to me. If you're watching this and you're lost, you're feeling very disheartened, I think please have a word with me. I will request that I'll not try to improve your score, but I'll try to cheer you up and let you be on the track. So that's all from my side. Thank you so much. See you in the next videos. Take care. Good night.